Hello and good evening, everyone. We are gathered here on the occasion to celebrate Children's Day. And Vitasta thought that what better way could there be to get two of our favorite children's authors and have them in conversation. I have with me Shelja Neer, ma'am, who is the author of Before the Clock Struck 12, and Swati Saravagi, ma'am, whose series Shivi Visits is releasing this 25th November. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Very well, thank you, Alicia. And how are you doing?
I'm also good, ma'am. But because today we are going to be discussing children and how to write about them, or what are the challenges that face while we are writing them, or how is it about writing about children, I am going to let Shalja ma'am take the lead. And Shalja ma'am, over to you now.
Thanks so much, Alicia, and welcome, Swati. It's so good to see you. I'm waiting for your books, as I'm sure you're waiting too. So, just a little introduction. I'll just give a little introduction about myself, and then maybe, Swati, you can introduce yourself as well. So, I am, as Alicia said, I'm Shailaja Nair. I've been writing for children for almost like over 30 years now, and I have written most of my writing is for the 9 to 11 year olds. There are some things that I've written for smaller children, some picture books, some poetry, etc. But most of my writing is for 9 to 11 year olds. I've been a journalist for as long, almost for 36 years now, and I've. But in my day job, I'm a financial journalist, and my favorite hobby is writing. I write for adults as well, but writing for children is what I'm passionate about. Swati,
Great,
over to you.
great. I'm Swati Saraugi. I'm an educator. I've taught children of all ages, which means that I have been involved with the Montessori group. I've been involved with the primary group in Singapore, with the higher secondary group in Visakhapatnam, and my life has taken me to quite a few cities, and I really enjoyed the experience. So that is what actually comes into my books when I say that Shivi visits and he goes to different cities. So we'll talk more about the book later, but a little bit more about me is that I'm running a school in Kolkata called Swarnim International School, and this is the first of my books, and I hope there will be more. Let's see how it goes. So I'm quite excited about it. I've done a bit of writing in my life because I'm fond of writing and reading. So, but nothing, nothing as big as having a book of my own. So back to you.
Swati, it is so good to hear. And you know what? Apart from just writing, we have also
Shaja ma'am, we
Shalja
can't hear.
ma'am,
can you hear me now? Okay. We have something else in common because you said you were in Singapore. I was in Singapore for 20 years. I just came back in 2019.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
I've only, yeah, exactly. And it's funny that we didn't meet in Singapore, which is like the size of a handkerchief, right?
Absolutely. I'm sure there are going to be more coincidences cropping up through the conversation. But that's
Yes,
interesting
apart
that you
from
were
just
there, yeah.
writing for children.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Swati, I would like to talk something a little bit more about the books. Okay. Now, when I saw the covers of your books, Shivi goes to various places, etc. When I hear that, when I see that, the thing that comes to my mind is, I don't know if you've read these books called Shally School books, which I used to read as a kid. Now it's written by an author called Eleanor M. Brent Dyer, and it is about a school that starts in the Austrian Tyrol, and then it moves. It goes through World War II, and they run from the Nazis, and they escape. Then they create another school in Guernsey. They have to escape from there, and then they ultimately go to Wales, and then they come back to Switzerland. It's a series, I think, almost 54 books that she wrote. And so one of the books is called Lavender Lay at the Chalet School. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Lavender Lay, she is famous because her aunt writes these books. Says Lavender laughs. So Lavender laughs at in the Himalayas. Lavender laughs in Italy. Lavender laughs in Turkey. That sort of thing. So when I saw the Shivi books, it reminded me of that, and it actually took me back to my childhood when I used to read these books. So, tell me something more about the adventures that Shivi goes through. Maybe the one where I think Shivi goes to Hyderabad, I think,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, why don't
Right.
you talk a little? You'll have to excuse me for 1 second. I'm alone in the house and the bell is ringing. So, let me just
Absolutely.
open the door. Please excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'll continue talking.
Hanji
So,
ma'am, please.
yeah. So Shivi is a young boy, and he gets an opportunity to visit different cities. The idea behind this was to get the idea behind this was to get different an experience of different Indian cities. As you mentioned, you know I felt that there isn't enough exposure to Indian cities, just the way you said that you had with the different countries that the child would go to. So here the idea is that if an Indian child visits different cities in India, what is it that they should look forward to? So it's given from a very childlike perspective of, in places that would interest them, food that always interests children, and what are the experiences, and how a city is never just made up of places. It's the entire culture of the city. It's the language, it's the customs, it's the people he meets. So it's all those little small things which have been woven into it. So that is the idea. And along with the travel part to the city, the important thing here which I've tried to do is bring in a life lesson for the child. So in each of the cities that he visits, there's a basic and imperative life skill that he learns. He's a young boy. Of course, they learn only by doing and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. So that is what happens to Shivi in each of these places. So that is the idea behind this. Would Should I
When
elaborate
you
more?
talk,
Give you some idea of what I'm
go
talking.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay, so suppose when he's in Kolkata, there is Rabindra Sangeet at the end of it, because that's such an integral part to
Hmm.
Bengalis, to Bengal actually, not just to Bengalis. There is Moody and there is Sandesh, and I hope both of you have had some chance in life to have sampled
Oh,
Moody and
yes,
right. So that
absolutely.
is that
And
is
I
so
love them.
intrinsic. Exactly, that's so intrinsic to Kolkata. Likewise, when he goes to Hyderabad, there is a mention of biryani. So my idea behind these books is that when a child is actually visiting these cities, he is able to relate to Shivi, who has visited these cities, and jot down his own experience, so it becomes his own personal diary. And the life skills, likewise, in all the books, I'm not going to go into the depth of each one of these. In one of the books, like the life skills I'm mentioning, in one of the books, he sees a hungry child, and the sister who's there with him tells him that not every child gets enough food to eat. So he realizes that he shouldn't be wasting food. Now that is something a lot of parents struggle with when they have young children. Their children are fussy eaters, and they just don't value food when it is given to them.
Hmm.
So it is brought in a story to Shivi that yes, you shouldn't be wasting food. In another place that he goes, he visits a restaurant where in Hyderabad, I hope you all are familiar with this, dine in the dark, where all the
Mhm.
Hmm.
waiters are actually visually sight impaired. And Shivi realizes how difficult it is to be able to do anything without the vision, without the gift of vision. So he realizes that when his mother keeps telling him that, don't waste all your time on the iPad and restrict your screen time. Now, that is again something all parents are struggling with today, especially it has become so pertinent. So then Shivi realizes that, okay, I should take better care of myself, my eyes. It's just these small things which, we would want as parents for our children to know. So those things that come across in the story, like without sounding too preachy, that Shivi learns, and each of the books has a small little element of each these things.
I love it what you were talking about when you talked about these little things that you would put in, which is actually teaching the child something without being didactic about it, right? Because I don't know, again, there are these books that were written sometime in the 1950s, I think, maybe 40s or 50s, and they were called the Elsie books. Now, they were like moral preaching for the child. They were a whole series of books written for children. And, Elsie is this goody goody two shoes, who does nothing wrong and who does everything right. And I must say, I feel like slapping her, because you like the lessons, but you don't want to be preached to as a child, right? And
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
think I think something that we authors do as a result is, and that is a challenge, is how do we give the lessons, the right lessons, without showing the children as goody two shoes, right? You want, because all of us love the naughty children. Let's be frank about it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Then the child who jumps on the sofa, who runs with the dog, who brings a stray puppy home. This is the child we love, right? So
What's
try.
childhood without that? What's the point if they were going to be too perfect?
Exactly.
Absolutely, that's too boring.
Yeah. So it is a challenge creating these characters who are attractive to children, but at the same time, you don't want them to think that, okay, the naughtier I am, the more disobedient I am going to be the hero. And so it is the right thing. So it is a challenge. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, I would think so, So, but then there's a very fine line between being naughty and being very intelligent and naughty about
Hmm.
it, and being extremely rude or badly behaved, if that is what
Yeah.
you were talking about. So, in
Hmm.
fact, one of my
Hmm.
favorite kids is Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, because
Yes.
he's brilliant, and so much of knowledge is shared, even
Hmm.
um, uh, you know Gyan, if I may say so, through Calvin by Bill Watterson to us, without
Hmm.
making us, be without being told what is, imposed in any way upon us. So
Yeah.
yes,
Or
what
Dennis the Menace. Or Dennis
that
the
is
Menace.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, they are a
In
nightmare,
fact,
but they are also a joy.
exactly, exactly. And I know as a mom that when my kid was small, he was no angel. He looked like an angel without wings because he had curly hair, chubby cheeks, and he looked, absolutely as the butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. But he could think up things, do things that you would never think of forbidding, you know but when I look back, I'm so glad he did them. It was such fun to bring him up as a result, right? If I had a child who was listening to everything I told, I think I would have been bored to tears as a mom too. Right? You've got two sons, right? What are your views?
Oh, they're wicked. They're wicked. and and that's the beauty of having children, because they make us see life afresh, and they keep us on our
Yeah.
toes, and they show us the joys anew. And every day is a surprise, is a total joy with them. You're absolutely right when you say that. I would have hated it myself if they were, just in that mold of being the perfect kid. In fact, I think, as mothers, there is no perfect kid. I'm
Hmm.
reminded of since in school when I was a teacher, when we of course had a share of, when there are 25 children, there will be all types of children. There was one particular child who was always the perfect child. She was a class monitor. She used to top everything. She was good in sports, you name it, and she was good in extracurricular activities. So after this is one of the PTCs, when a parent teacher conference, when I'm sitting with, and I've just finished, gone through the naughtier kids, I've gone through the ones who are struggling in class, I've gone through, so I'm looking forward to this mother who's coming my way now, because I know that, we'll be exchanging pleasantries, and there really isn't much that she's going to be anxious about. So, and then she
Hmm.
comes, sits down, and she says that she's just too perfect. I want her to go out there and have some fun. So that was such a relieving moment for me, that okay, as mothers, we are never really going to be, nothing is ever enough like that, in that sense of the thing. We'll always want everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
it's like the mother who sends the child for dancing and for piano and singing and chess and drawing, and there is no human being who can be good at all these things, right? But we send them for everything because we look for that perfect child. But frankly, we love the imperfect child.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Shailja ma'am,
So,
tell us a little bit about your
yeah.
book. I'm very
Okay,
keen to
yeah.
know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, my book was released in September, early September, and it is called When the Clock Struck 12, August 15th, 1947. And it's to do with, there are these two children. So I used, Praveen was my son, and my nephew Prashant, and they were both the same age. My sister and I were pregnant at the same time. They were only 2 months apart. So, and they were the best of pals. So I used them actually in the prologue. So what happens is Praveen and Prashanta, the school is over. It's going to be the long weekend because it is Independence Day, and they are discussing like what they will do. And the whole story then comes as a flashback where their great aunt tells them the story. And then it goes back to the first weeks when India had become independent. And I mean, as history tells us, and as we know, and we also remember, we are the generation that was born after India became independent, but at the same time, parents and grandparents and great aunts and neighbors have told us so much about those days. So what had happened was I wanted to teach my son, who was about 10 or 11. I wanted to teach him about our freedom struggle without, as you said, being preachy about it. So I created a story to teach him about India's freedom struggle. And then that is the story that has been expanded into this book. So it is the adventure of four children. Both are a brother and a sister each. So they're Hindu children and Muslim children, and they are the best of friends. And then, because at that time we know that Delhi had riots, and then Gandhiji had to go on fast to stop the rioting that was happening, and partition had happened. People were coming, people were dying. All this was there. So, set against that background, these children help each other. So they know that something is going to happen to their friends family, and they actually take it upon themselves to go and rescue. I'm trying to give you the story without revealing the entire plot. so so this it's a story, it's an adventure story, and it is a story also of friendship. It's a story of Hindu Muslim amity. It is a story of our freedom struggle. I refer to what I consider as one of the best speeches ever made in on earth, and that is Nehru's speech, which he made in Parliament when India became independent, which is that tryst with destiny speech. I think that and Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream," I consider these the most perfect speeches ever made. So I have used that in the book. And then how the characters react to that, thinking about that speech, and then what happens when India has become independent, but how people come together and the different localities. So I am a Delhi girl. I was born in Kerala, but I grew up in Delhi. My dad was in the government. So, I brought all my love for the city into that book.
Right. Sounds great. Sounds like a book I'd love to read and have in my school library, because I think there's so much to from children
Oh,
can learn from this.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to. I love to know what children think about that. I've given it to some children, and of course, my son loved the story. My nephew loved the story, so I've dedicated it to both of them because they were my first readers. So I've dedicated the book to both of them. But I would love to have more feedback from children, because the best thing I find when writing for children is children do not hold back. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they are not nice to you or anything, and like adults. So what children tell you is the absolute truth, which is why I love writing for them. If your book is boring, they have no compunctions in letting you know, and if it is good, they'll do the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not just about books. I think that's how children are. And that's why, I've dedicated my life to children, from teaching them to writing for them. It's all about, being with them, that the energy, the positivity that they exude is just such a joy. And to be able to, mold their future in some small way, to be able to shape and provide a platform for them to grow the way we'd like them to grow. I think
Mhm.
That's what we'd like to do with our lives. Make it a little, make it count, right?
Absolutely, I agree. Another question that I often think about is that when I write a story, for instance, or I write a book, or the ideas come from everywhere. It could be a
Hmm.
newspaper snippet, or it could be just something. Actually, one story came because one of my colleagues told me what had happened to her as a child. She was going on a bus and the bus was hijacked, and then how she and her brother were only barely, I think she was about 6 or 7, and her brother was only about 5. And they were going with a servant, and the servant actually got, I mean, their family helper, and he is actually attacked by the hijackers. And she told me the story, and taking it on, I had written a story called Brothers in Arms, where I brought in the Sri Lankan terrorism, and then the terrorism that we were in, at that time, seeing in Punjab and various parts of India. And but then I went, the two friends who come, the brothers in arms, one is a small little terrorist boy who's only about 15 years old, and then he and that other child, how they actually become friends, because each understands the other person. And if we can only understand other people, frankly, we can get rid of many of the problems that we have in the world today. It's not, it might seem a simplistic answer, but it's not. Most of the fear that human beings have, which is why we then tend to be protectionist and talk about terrorists and all that, is the lack of understanding and awareness, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what
In a
about
one
you? Where do you?
No, sorry, I'm cutting you, but I just wanted to just share this, that in one of my books, Shivi goes and he is looking forward to meeting a friend, that the house that he's going to be staying in, and he's
Mhm,
imagining that they'll do all the fun things, play cricket and things like that, and when he goes there, he discovers that she's actually on a wheelchair. That
mhm,
and he's very disappointed, as children would be, because this is not what he'd imagined. But then he realizes along the way that she is fun in different ways. And
mhm,
at that level, at a 6-year old 7-year old level, there is this acceptance, which again comes very naturally to children if they're just steered and guided in the right way. He just accepts the fact that yes, she can't do this, but she's so good with these other things, these other aspects. So he carries on. So that is another thing that I wanted to bring in through my books, this tolerance that you're talking about, the understanding of each other, the acceptance. And nowadays, mental health, physical disabilities, these are things that we are really not talking about enough with
mhm,
children. So these
mhm,
are the small things that the book is trying to bring into the conversations that parents can have with the children. Once a child may encounter, he may be uncomfortable, he may not know how to broach the topic, but through the book
mhm.
it can just come across as being something that you just accept and move along. It's no big deal unless you decide to make it a big deal.
You're so correct about the fact that children are very accepting. It's as you grow up that you learn not intolerance. Intolerance is not something that comes naturally to human beings, actually. And you see that with the children. You never find them having problems making friends, for instance.
Absolutely.
I remember something that happened when my kid was in kindergarten. He was at Amity International School in Saket, and he was in kindergarten, and the teacher was teaching them about the different states and the languages and mother tongue and all that stuff. So he had this little Sikh friend. And that child got paranoid and said, I don't know how to write Punjabi. So Praveen immediately turns to him and says, don't worry, just say that your mother tongue is Malayalam, which is our mother tongue. We are from Kerala, right? So he said, what about, and he said, what about, I don't know how to speak. So Praveen says, don't worry, I'll teach you. And so when the teacher came around, and this little Sikh child gets up and she says, what's your mother tongue? And he says, Malayalam. And so the teacher takes 2 steps back, and then she says, but do you know how to speak it? So he says, no, Praveen will teach me. So, and the teacher told me this when I went to pick him up in the afternoon. And I just felt it was so true about, all the artificial things we teach children. They
Absolutely.
themselves will make a beautiful world. which is again
Absolutely.
why I like writing for children, because the things that I can bring in are things that come naturally to children. So I want them to stay like that as they grow up. I want them to retain that innocence and that acceptance and that tolerance. And even, like you never find a child making fun of another child for language. You will
No,
always see them helping each other. They'll
Absolutely.
teach. So I would love that to continue. So I try to bring that in my stories are mostly adventure stories, because that's what I love to read as a child, that and school stories. So I try to bring that because I would love them to keep it, to
Mm.
maintain it as they grow up.
Absolutely. You're so right on that. Absolutely. Yeah.
And something else that you said just brought something that's very relevant in today's world. You talked about disabilities, or the differently abled. And,
Yes.
I think more and more stories need to bring that into the mainstream, how the differently abled are brought into the mainstream. And for instance, there is a collection of stories where there is a story of mine as well, which was brought out quite a few years ago in 2012. And it is to do, all the stories are meant for children who've gone through trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and the title of the book was Lighthouse in the Storm. So I mean, that is something else that I think is very relevant. And maybe, Alicia, we should look at, maybe compiling a series of stories
yes,
or a collection of
absolutely.
stories which are aimed at making what is just now kept outside the parameters of our mainstream society, and how to make that inclusive. I think that would be a great project. What do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, sorry, Alicia, please, please.
No, no, both
No,
of
no,
you.
no. Even I think it's a very good idea. Because see, yes, I think we should do it. Maybe in the coming few months we'll have this conversation again on that book.
I think so. I
And
think it will be a great idea. I mean, I didn't think about this before, frankly, but when she talked about it, I think it is such a wonderful idea to bring these. So, a collection of stories, I think, would be a very topical and relevant volume to bring out.
yeah.
So,
Um,
yeah, so go ahead. No, go ahead,
no,
Swati.
no, no. No, please go ahead.
No, I was just talking about another series that Vitasta is bringing out is to do with our leaders, and which is another thing that brings me to the thing that we talk about role models, right? So, when you talk about Shivi traveling, etc., do you look at this about the different role models that children might see, the ones they might follow?
These books particularly don't have role models in them, but there are
Mm-hmm.
these skills. So in one of them, he learns responsibility. So I mean,
Okay.
Shibi at that age is perhaps a little too young to have role models. He's looking up to his parents, and parents are always trying
Mm-hmm.
to guide him, and there are grandparents, and he's part of a nice, happy joint family. So
Mm-hmm.
for him at his stage, his family are his role models.
Mm-hmm.
So
Shelja ma'am, can I ask one question to both of you?
Of course.
Okay. So when I said that you are our favorite children's author, I meant it because I remember reading the first drafts of both of your books. I started Shelja ma'am's book mid-March. I read it one day in the middle of the March, and just went like, "Yeah, we are going to. We should publish this as soon as possible. It's amazing." And uh, it was wonderful reading that script. And then I remember as soon as I finished working on When the Clock Struck 12, I got the advanced drafts of Shivi Visit. So I switched to that because this was June, July, and the drafts of Shivi were already coming in. We were looking at the illustrations and we were fine tuning the language. And I remember seeing your corrections, Swati ma'am, to the language. So the question that I have for both of you is that what reached me, even though after that it was modified a lot, but was a very good draft. What is the story behind those drafts? Like what is your process of writing? How do you go about editing it? How is it that I got such wonderful stories sitting in my office in Delhi? That's what I want to
Swati,
know.
Swati, would you like to answer first?
Sure. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you for that word of confidence. And I actually did reach out to all the children I knew to find out if the book is going to work. So that was the, what you mentioned earlier, Shelja ma'am, that you would love to get children's feedback, and that's exactly what I
Mm-hmm.
reached out. I went to my own school children. I read out to them to see what they felt about it, and at some level I felt that maybe the teachers are saying all the right things, because at the end, I mean, it's maybe they don't want to disappoint me or something like that. So then I reached out to my friends and their children, because I wanted children to give me the direct feedback. And then one child who never reads, who doesn't like books, his mother turned around and told me that he wants Shivi to come to Bangalore. He wants, he wants to show Shivi around Bangalore, and Bangalore he wants to interact. And that really got me thinking that yes, we are on the right track. If children are getting interested and they want to meet Shivi maybe, or they want to have an interaction with Shivi, that is what is really important. They can relate to him. And if readers are getting converted into readers, that is really what my motive here was, that it should just find that connect with children. So my process here was that, I made a list of all the places that a child would be interested in visiting in each of these cities. I thought of what is that one thing that perhaps he's going to learn in that city. And then I wove them together. And as it happens, things just kind of keep coming to you. So the next book that I'm thinking about is, that if Shivi visits the Seven Sisters, the states in the
Mm-hmm.
Northeast. And then we know that, of course, they are known for being the cleanest village in Asia. They are known for the very eco friendly, sustainable lifestyles that they maintain there. It was very easy for me to know that, yes, this is what Shivi is going to learn over there. So when he visits the place, he learns that, and he comes back and he says, okay, this is what the life changes I'm going to make to my lifestyle, and take it from there. So, so there's the list of places, there is the life skill that he wants to learn, and then I bring in all the cultural elements. When he goes to one of the cities and he meets his aunt, it's about touching her feet. Now that is a dying art. We've all become like very tuned to saying hello and hi and hey, and there's just such something so intrinsically beautiful, so Indian about getting blessings from your elders, showing respect. So I just wanted that. So again, the mother doesn't have to tell the child after she's read out the book to him, but the child will know that yes, this is a way to greet elders, so that next time he's there, it's something that will come naturally to him. you know so at the end of each of the books, there is the point that, like I mentioned earlier, a page for them to jot down their own experiences when they are in that city. How different was it from Shivi's? There is, all the causes that are close to our heart, we kind of want to bring them in. So in one of the cities, he visits animals who are in enclosures, who are in cages. Another city he goes and he visits and he sees they're in enclosures, and there's just more freer and healthier looking. So that kind of stuff which we want our children to be aware of. So that is what I try to bring in into my stories. So that was my process, Alicia, and all the help that you gave me through the journey. And it was, I had an illustrator, a fantastic illustrator, Shreya. She was from Inkpar. They kind of had my kind of aesthetic sense, so they knew the kind of child and the family and the scenario that we wanted to paint out there. So that was a big help. And Alicia kept guiding us through the whole process with all of
It
it.
was a pleasure,
So
ma'am. And you did most of the work. So
yeah, so that was my journey. Shailja, up to you. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, as I told you, I started off as a story for my son and then I expanded it into a book. Now, I am a true Virgo, okay? I nitpick to the last minute, last thing that can be there. So, frankly, I do create an Excel spreadsheet so that I have all the ages of the children right. I don't get confused over it. And also, like for instance, if I'm writing books that become a series, then I don't want to forget what has been written, which is what you find in many of them. You find them in the Chalet School books, you find them in Mary Higgins Clark, which is for adults, but in there you'll find, in whenever there's a series, you'll find sometimes the names change, sometimes the ages are wrong, everybody does,
True.
obviously you don't remember. So actually, I created a Excel spreadsheet which will help me when I do the next one, next book, etc. And my son used to call me a complete nerd, and I am, and I enjoy being a nerd. So I like doing these things. So that is what gives the structure. So it's not a problem for me when I create a story and then I do create a structure for it. But the first time I start writing, I just write freehand. I don't stop at all. I don't even put in, sometimes not even punctuation marks. I just write a stream of consciousness. Then once I've got the story more or less, then I introduce the structure into it. And as far as the draft is concerned, what I sent to you, remember, I'm a professional editor. It is a matter of pride for me that it has to be absolutely right. If anybody finds a mistake in what I have written, I tell you, I cringe with shame. So whatever manuscript I have given you, even as you know, even the leader series that I've given you,
Yeah.
the manuscript
Yeah.
is as I mean, unless there is some sort of oversight that happens, which happens, I mean, we are all human. Otherwise, I try to give you a manuscript that's absolutely perfect. And that is going to be my hallmark anyway.
And
But as
we'll
I
always love you for that.
thank you. But when it comes to ideas for the stories, as I said, it comes from anywhere. I mean, I've written a book where the story actually came because I was sitting on the aircraft and there was a mother at the back with her child. And the mother was explaining things to the child. But the child's responses were hilarious. Like he would look at a small little blue patch from the window and he'll say, "Oh my God, an ocean." And it was like barely a swimming pool. So, and the mother would try to tell him that it is not an ocean, it's a pool, it's a lake, it's a river, whatever, like that. But the child would insist, no, it looks like an ocean, so it is an ocean. And I've used that in another story that I've written. So ideas come from anywhere.
And
Perfect.
like we mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, there's more stuff which is common here: Virgo, perfectionism, and the
Oh,
Excel sheet.
Alicia, you couldn't have got two authors that were similar than Swati and me, right?
We are very lucky, ma'am. We have been very lucky indeed.
I
Chaliye.
think we are at the end of our time limit. So unless
Yes,
Swati,
ma'am.
you want to add anything else,
Not particularly. I would just want, parents to pick up the book and have a look and really send us genuine feedback, because, then we can visit more cities and with more ideas and l- take it from there. Yeah.
Okay.
thank
Shailja,
you
ma'am, would you
so
like to
much.
add?
Well, I'm so happy to work with you, Alicia. It's a great, actually, with us, as I told you, Renu brought me back into writing. But more than that, Vitasta is like a family. So it's great. It's great working with you people. So
Thank you,
thank
ma'am.
you so much for that.
Thank you. Renu ma'am would love hearing that. And yes, she always tries to make it a family. Thank you both of you for coming in. For the audience that we have, Shailja ma'am's book is already available on Amazon. And Swati ma'am's book will be releasing this 25th November. And I am sure that you're going to love both these books because I am a reader and I loved them. So if you love reading, you will definitely love them. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our authors for taking out the time and helping
Thank
our
you.
audience through your process. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Lisa. Thank you, Shelja. Pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you, Swati. Bye.
Bye bye. Then we'll take your leave.